I always associate moments in time with drinks too. And I think being in that environment and that time can help trigger back those memories.
This is the Drinking Buddy Show, where we explore food, craft, beverage pairings, and the entrepreneurs and tastemakers behind them. I'm Frank Rogers, founder of Drinking Buddy Artisan Snacks, and on today's show, I'll be chatting with Adam and Beef, hosts of the Virtual Pub podcast in Colorado, getting their backstory and what brought them to Colorado from a tiny island, and sharing drinks and the experiences that make them memorable. Adam and Beef have been friends for nearly 30 years. Adam is a hospitality industry veteran with over 20 years as a bartender, creator of beverage programs, owner of a restaurant, and purveyor of adult beverages. Beef enjoys adult beverages from 1 to 4 at a time, on the patio, in the shower, and at Colorado's many beer festivals. Together, they introduce the makers of fine beverages from around the world, fun cocktails from listeners, pub trivia, and more. What are you guys drinking tonight?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. I'm drinking a plethora of things, to be honest with you. I got a grapefruit IPA. Yeah, grapefruit IPA, a cocktail, another cocktail, and some sake.
Very nice.
What are your beers that you're drinking, Beef?
So I got the Eddie Line grapefruit IPA out of Buena Vista, Colorado. And I mixed that with tequila and Cointreau in another glass. And then I have a grapefruit Greyhound.
I kind of shared some things with Beef. I wanted to make sure that we had kind of the same ideas with some of the Colorado beers. So, yeah, I did the Juicy Bits from WeldWorks, Hazy IPA, and then, the Grapefruit Yanker. And it's one of my favorite things to do is also mixing it with the tequila and the Cointreau. And mine is a little different. I actually did Grand Marnier because I wanted to add a little more of that flavor. So it's grapefruit, mango, and orange in mine.
Very nice. Very summery. Nice citrus.
Yeah, and I think it'll go great with the snacks that you have.
Absolutely. For me, since I have to represent Long Beach, of course, first one is going to be a nice Long Beach Beer Lab dad beer. As a dad, I thought, this is perfect. It's a nice German Pilsner, nice for summertime, and this is a 6.2 ABV. So not too strong, but a nice way to start off. And then I've got a fun one that I'm going to do next. So this is from Bottle Logic, and it's a Hanamachi. It's their take on a Japanese rice lager. I had this a couple nights ago. It's almost identical to Asahi Super Dry.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that they were able to do that.
I love a good rice beer. It has gets me kind of excited and ready to have a couple other drinks. I don't know.
Right. It's a good starter. It's a really good starter.
It is.
Yeah, it's not heavy. It's not like starting on the wrong foot with like a stout or something.
Yeah, your night goes down much faster if you have that. So,
well, gentlemen, cheers.
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 Kampai, right?
Kampai. Make that glass nice and dry. You guys are from a place that I just happened to have gone to, which I thought was really funny when we were emailing back and forth. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Yeah, so we actually grew up on an island in the Northwest, just outside of Seattle. It's called Vashon Island. And it's this little tiny island where there's a bigger population in the summertime than there is in the rest of the year. And it's got just a great feel to it. Beef, you were there a lot longer than I was.
I mean, really, if you picture a Northwest island, it's exactly what you think. Not too big, small town, no stoplights, 2 4-way stops. For the longest time, there was no fast food place. There was a Dairy Queen, and then that went away, and then it was Subway finally came in, but that was it. 2 grocery stores. Picturesque.
Oh, it's beautiful. No, it's absolutely gorgeous.
There's a fun little Christmas book that was written about the island. And I think it's something like The Tales of the Red Ranger. And it's a local artist who he did a lot of comic strips. I think he was one of the artists that contributing to the Family Circus. And he drew some of those things, and he made this whole thing. And there's a little folklore part of the island. There's a bike in a tree, and it's this old bike that someone put in the tree, and there's all this myth that goes around it. So it's kind of the little fun thing that the island has.
Yeah, like someone laid their bike against a young tree. This tree grew around it, and it's halfway up the tree. There's a bike coming out of the trunk. It's nuts.
And there's all these stories that go behind it, all the urban legends.
I went there pure chance. 2 buddies and I decided to go visit some friends of mine. So I went to the University of Hawaii. I'm originally from San Diego. Went back to California. 2 of my buddies from San Diego and I took the train all the way up to Seattle to the Coast Starlight.
Oh yeah.
Which, it takes you like 3 days
Yeah.
just to get there,
75
and takes you
stops.
through the worst parts of every town. It's hilarious. But we get to Seattle, and then my friends from Washington were in Lake Bay. And then they said, oh, you should go out to this island. So we go out to Vashon Island. And being from San Diego and being from California, I think we were not ready for how disarmingly nice people were. Pull up in their car and they're like, hey, you guys are new here. Do you need help getting to the grocery store? Are you going over to the one hostel that's here? And we're like, are you going to kill us?
Yeah. Yeah, the island it's small, and you wave at everyone you go by. It takes you an hour to get a gallon of milk at the grocery store, kind of a place.
Yeah, there's no hiding from anybody. Everyone knows everybody. When I actually went to college, I went to college in Tacoma, Washington, and I would come back to visit Adam, and I wouldn't go see my parents that lived on Vashon. And then word would get out that I was on the island. I didn't stop by to say hi to them, so I was good.
Uh-oh, you're in trouble now.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You got out of your car on the ferry to get there, then everyone knew that you were coming back to the island. So
Now I have to ask Beef, how'd you get the name Beef?
I mean, I wish it was a really good story, but I mean, I am larger than some, not in height, but in size. But I actually kind of gave it to myself, unfortunately. We were watching Empire Records, and for some reason we were sitting through the credits, and there's a negative cutter who's pretty famous. I think he does all the negative cuts. His name's Mo Henry.
Okay.
And so I was like, Mo Henry, that's a cool name. I was like, you guys should call me Mo Beef. And then and I was just messing around. So then it just kind of stuck.
And it stuck. Yeah.
And then they dropped the Mo and just started calling me Beef.
Just Beef. All right.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was like a football name or something. Like,
I mean, it makes sense, right? But nope, I got it myself, kind of.
and it's stuck ever since.
Yep.
Now, how'd you guys both end up in Colorado?
Adam came here for a girl.
yeah.
I followed shortly after. I came here for Adam.
Yeah, I flew out and I was like, "You're coming out, buddy. You can't stay up there in the Northwest where it's dreary all the time. Got to get some sunshine."
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like I kind of was struggling in life. I graduated from college and couldn't get the job I wanted, and I had a pretty crappy job,
Gotcha.
2 of them, and I was like, this is not what I expected to graduate from college. And Adam was like, come on out, buddy. Broke up with my girlfriend and came on out.
That's nice. You got the romantic podcast together. And
That's right.
I know. We've known each other for too long, so it's it's like, well, might as well, and like especially too during this time where we're not able to hang out. We get together and drink and talk and all that, and that's kind of how this whole thing was born, was during this time. And I always kind of had like an idea of doing a podcast at some point, but I was on a video conference with a buddy having a couple cocktails, and I was like, this would be cool. And Beef and I just talked to him and was like, hey, would you want to do this with me? And he's like, yep, done, no problem. He's like, I drink anyways on a Saturday, that's fine, so let's do it. So it was great, and kind of we just started doing it and having fun with it. So
I met Adam when I was in 8th grade and he was in 7th grade, so it goes back that far.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Frank, the funny thing is, actually, we have a lot of connections. So I actually was born in San Diego, and my sister teaches at the King Kamehameha School in Hawaii. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
How many siblings do you have?
I'm like the Brady Bunch is the best way to explain it. So My dad had 3 kids. My mom had 3 kids. They came together and had me. So I'm like the housekeeper in the middle of that whole chart. You know what I mean? So it's
sealed the deal.
Yeah. It was the glue that I guess for all of it. So so I have a lot of half siblings. So
one is in Hawaii. I'm imagining everyone's kind of spread out.
Yeah, a lot up in the Northwest. One in San Diego. Yeah, it's kind of all over.
And Beef, what about you?
Yeah, I have a half sister and a half brother back east in Massachusetts. For the most part, I was kind of raised as an only child, so like I didn't really know them very much. So kind of got to know them later in life. So yeah, only child for me growing up, so I was pretty spoiled.
My sister is much older than me. She's 8 years older than me. So she graduated high school when I was like 8 or 9. And so from 9 onward, I was sort of an only child. And she lived in Massachusetts for a long time. Then she eventually made her way back to San Diego and is still there. But yeah, it's funny, the little connections you don't expect between people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Adam's like the closest thing to a brother to me. Like his parents, I was at his house all the time. So it was like I had my parents, then I had Adam's parents. They're like my surrogate parents.
Now, is anybody still on Vashon?
Nope.
No.
No, not even our friends are on Vashon. There's some that I went to high school that are still there, but yeah, my parents moved out to Colorado to do the grandparent thing. So they followed me out after I had a kid. Adam, your parents are always nomads.
Yeah, they have a fifth wheel, and wherever that can go, they are. So they're just east of San Diego right now. So they're, so many of my aunts and uncles are down there still. So they were just going to spend the winter there, but now they kind of got trapped there. So, and what's east of San Diego is not cold during this time of the year. So it's like 100 and some degrees, and they can't wait to go back up north. So they're trying to get up there as soon as they can. So
yeah, it's hot. Well, I think this is a nice vehicle for you guys, and same for me, especially with kids. It's hard to go out. It's hard to hang out with your buddies. And sometimes you lose touch. I do the same thing on my podcast. The people I bring on a lot of time are just my buddies.
Right.
We went to college together. We're friends. But I can't just go out like I used to in my 20s. So
yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There's bedtime. That's part of the ritual, right? So it's you have to take care of that before you can have a beverage or two.
Like my son, like he knows, 8 o'clock, that's whiskey time. Like my son knows. It's like after 8 o'clock,
8 o'clock is whiskey time. Do you have a weird euphemism for it, like daddy's medicine, or is it just
whiskey
he knows. Time?
So
he knows.
He knows it's whiskey time. Like he's older. He's 10.
Okay.
Almost.
Yeah.
He'll be 11 in October. So, but when he was probably 3, the kids love going to liquor stores out here because I always get lollipops. But I took him to the liquor store, and this lady just bought a 6-pack and was like carrying it out, and he's just sitting there. He's like, "You got your beer." Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I got my beer.
Tell everyone.
We used to go 4-wheeling up in the hills in Colorado, and we would allegedly take beverages with us up there because we're not going very fast. But we would crack them, and I would hear him in the back, and he would do that. He would make that sound. Like he would make every time he would crack one, he would make that sound. So
nice.
So yeah, he knows all about. He's getting into the booze industry.
That's hilarious. Hey, I think it's better to educate them than to tell them it's all bad.
Yeah.
Until they get it from their friends. I think it's much better if their dad teaches them.
Oh yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Oh, he won't drink until he's 21. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was my parents. That's what they thought.
Adam and Beef try out our first snack offering, Rayu Senbei. So, yeah, I'm really excited to have you guys try the snack that I sent. I sent you the chili oil rice crackers and Japanese Rayu Senbei. They're unique because you can get rice crackers most places in the U.S. You can go to an Asian market. You don't even have to. Nowadays, you could go to a grocery store and find them. And they tend to just be salt or maybe soy sauce flavored, which is pretty typical. These are unique in having that chili oil with the garlic in it. Now, do you guys like ramen?
Yes.
So you know the Rayu, it's like the spicy little sauce that comes in the ball about this big.
Yeah.
They use that, add the garlic, glaze it, and it gives it a flavor that I think, Adam, like you mentioned, you got those citrus flavors there. I think it's going to go really well with that because it's got a little bit of a kick, but not too much, a little bit of sweetness. But I'm excited to have you guys try it out and tell me what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I think is fun too, and I wanted to kind of talk to you about this, is when I do food and beverage pairings, one thing I really like to do is, you take the sip and then you have the food, but then even kind of roll it a little bit with the drink and the food. It's not food or beverage, it's food and beverage. And you kind of join the two together.
Yeah, and this snack is not meant to be eaten by itself. It's not like watch a movie and just munch on it. It's meant to be paired with beverages.
I just took a bite and I had it with my grapefruit Greyhound. And I feel like, because I was munching on it before we came on, and it's super unique, a unique flavor for sure. But I feel like when I had with that grapefruit Greyhound, it really made that heat resonate at the end, which is pretty interesting. Because before I was drinking it, and I would still get the heat, but then with this Greyhound, it kind of makes it linger.
Right.
Yeah, your flavors are crazy. Like it's sweet, like the rice is sweet. You got that salty soy, and then I don't know, there's like a flavor I can't put my tongue on or my finger on, and then you got that heat at the end.
The garlic and just the kind of rice that it's made with. It's made with a mochi rice, which is the stickier rice. So it's going to give you a little bit more of that, what they call umami, like that earthiness.
That's what I was looking for. I couldn't remember the name. It was like your whatever 7th sense or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The umami, you find that in a lot of Japanese beer snacks. They go really well with beer, with sake and shochu because of that umami, especially, but also just a little bit of the sweetness from the rice.
And that's the thing I love too, is when even opening the package is just the aroma that comes out too. There is this beautiful salty aroma that you're starting to smell, and it almost kind of does give you that, oh, that's going to be really good with a beer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna want to have this and have a beer with it right away. And it's really nice too, especially pairing it with some of these a little more fruit forward, even the haziness of the IPA. You gotta almost get this like milky kind of quality that comes through a hazy IPA. And I think that kind of plays really nice with the spice, the chili spice that's coming off of it.
It does well with hazies. It also does well with stouts, which I was experimenting with this past week. I actually got an organic chocolate stout from the UK that was just fantastic. I mean, it feels almost ridiculous, like you're drinking chocolate milk. It's so smooth, but it's still got that a little bit of bitterness at the end. So you know you're drinking beer, not chocolate milk. But that plus the spiciness goes really, really well.
I would even think, even like with a porter, obviously I'm not drinking a porter because it's summertime, but I would think with like that darkness,
right,
that heaviness, and then like the snack super light, you would get that salty sweetness. I bet you that would be like fire.
Oh, was it the Samuel Smith stout that you had, or was it, do you remember?
Yeah, but I picked it up at Trader Joe's. I didn't think anything of it. I just saw like organic chocolate stout. I'm like, oh, okay, this might be good. It might be terrible. You never know.
Yeah.
Because stuff like that can go either way.
I love anytime too when you get that kind of chocolatey richness and then the malts that come through, but then you get that with a spicy note. I think that's always such a fun play. It's almost like that Mexican chocolate kind of feel to it.
Right. Yeah, like a Mexican mocha.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you guys been down to Mexico City or anywhere in Mexico and had chocolate for breakfast, like the drinking chocolate?
Yes. Yeah. It's awesome.
Oh, it's so good. And I never thought of that. And I'm like, but this makes sense. Chocolate is from the Americas.
Yeah.
It would be your coffee. It's how you'd wake up in the morning. And it goes really well with spicy food. When we return, Adam and Beef get into some of their favorite food pairings. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And if you'd like to support us, be sure to try our one-of-a-kind Japanese artisanal snacks. And pick up a Drinking Buddy hat, coaster, and more. Get free shipping too. Go to www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and click on Shop for more details. What do you guys usually like to pair? What would you normally get?
Like I'm gonna have whatever the wife puts in front of me. Nice charcuterie plate.
Oh,
nice.
See, there you go, buddy. That's not bad,
man.
Mostly salami.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for fancy. I'm just curious.
Popcorn's my favorite food of all time. So
like a salty, buttery popcorn, or?
Oh yeah, salty, buttery. The buttery, the better. I have one of those like movie theater popcorn machines like in my house, so I make that a lot. Or you used to work at a bar where you had like the peanuts you throw on the floor, so I was always munching on those. And I mean, I'm not fancy enough to pair food with booze. Really,
I think you got to be fancy.
No, I just drink whatever's
not required,
and eat whatever's in front of me. Like I don't pair. My wife likes to pair wine and steak and wine and breathing. Like she'll drink wine with anything. But
it's going really well with this oxygen right now.
Yeah. Right, yeah. It's really keeping me alive. Thank God for the wine.
Breathe in, drink. Oh, what a pairing.
Yeah. For me, it's funny because it can kind of go two ways. It's either going to be, if I'm going to do like really, I'm going to be cognitive of like, I want to pair food and beverage. It really just depends on the beverage that I want to have to drink, and then I'll go to the food. My number one priority will be the beverage, and then I'll pair the food to it. So I may be like, okay, I'm going to drink a really killer Cabernet tonight, so I'm going to get some really good prosciutto, and I'm going to hand slice that prosciutto and do that kind of thing. But some nights it's really just pairing my beverage with my beverage. It's like, and then I'll having like a little snack there on the side is kind of there too. But it just really kind of depends on the night and the mood I'm in. So.
Yeah, like when I go to the liquor store, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to be making. I just think about what I want to drink. For me, you could pair anything with what I'm drinking because, like, that's all I care about really is the booze.
But I think you're hitting on the key there. I think you have to start with the beverage, not the food. I don't know how to do it the other way around. Let's say you have a steak and then you're going to go pair the wines. I mean, it might taste good, but I think, no, you pick the bottle that you want that night and then you say, okay, I'm going to have this with it.
It's harder to find where this is what I want to eat, even when you have the atypical, you should eat X, Y, and Z, or drink these three things with this food. It doesn't always go that way because it's not what your palate is going to enjoy either, too. So it's blending that all together. I do enjoy, though, going to a good food pairing. Beef and I, we've done this a couple times even too. We'll go to whiskey dinners and things like that where they're very intentional. Like we're pairing this whiskey with this food because of these reasons. And I love that. I think it's such a fun way to play of your palate when you do those things.
Well, I think it also expands your palate a lot because sometimes the experts in pairing will find something that you would have never thought of.
Yeah.
You go to the liquor store, yeah, you got those things that you would normally get. You're going to have the popcorn and the potato chips, the beef jerky. It's salty, it's savory, it goes well with most light American beers, so it works well. But they'll find something, oh, I have this random vegetable that you've never heard of, and I got this cheese from a very specific region in France. And it blows you away when you have all those, everything on your palate gets lit up, and it's just amazing.
That's always the exciting part is when you can have an experience when you're eating and drinking something almost simultaneously and every part of your palate is firing. It's like that perfect moment you're getting. And I love that. That's always a fun thing.
Now, what do you guys like to do for ambiance? Do you ever think about, okay, I'm going to have a beer, I'm going to have a wine tonight. Do you think about what kind of music you want to listen to? Do you have a favorite place in your house you like to drink?
I love drinking outside, in the heat, playing games, or we have a nice patio, and the wife and I and our sister-in-law will drink outside, put the umbrella up, and play Scrabble or whatever. I think outside's like my favorite. Or I do love a beer in the shower. I'm not gonna lie.
I do too.
My wife got me onto that. She's like, "Why don't you take a beer in the shower?" Because she'll take her wine in the shower.
That's true. I mean, you see ladies all the time, right? They'll have in a tray. Here's my rosé. Here's my book, the candle and everything.
Yeah.
They do it up.
It was so cool. I was up in Cape Cod and we were up there for a wedding and we go up there and I had a VRBO at a place that had an outdoor shower. My buddy that was with us, he's like, "Oh man, you should have a beer shower out there." And I was like, "Wait, what? A beer shower?" Lights came down. I was like, "This is an amazing moment." So I go out and I do it. And I'm like, that was the greatest thing I've ever experienced. Outdoor beer shower. And, every once in a while you crack a good beer shower. It is nice to have, for me, there is definitely like an outside thing. Our front porch of our house, once the kids are in bed, because that's typically, I've got 2 little kids. So putting them in bed. And then we actually have really cool wine barrel seats that were created out of an old wine barrel. And my wife and I will sit there and have a cocktail and we can watch the sunset over the mountains. And that's usually pretty much, you can't beat that kind of an ambiance on a nightly basis. But for me too, I always associate moments in time with drinks too. And I think being in that environment in that time can help trigger back those memories too. There's certain days that I'll think about, when I was in Sonoma at a certain winery drinking plain horseshoes by ourselves at a winery. And like, this is pretty much the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. People think very specifically like there's an exact science behind the food and the beverage. And there are a lot of things that go into it. But just being in a great mood makes your beverage taste better.
Oh, yeah.
I generally don't drink if I'm in a really bad mood because no matter what, it's going to taste bad. And that might just be me. I know some people, they find solace in it. But if I'm just had a bad day, things didn't go well at work, etc., I don't really want to just drink something by myself. Like if I'm with friends and letting off steam, that's different. But there's something about your mood that really, really impacts the flavor of what you're drinking.
I'm a little bit of the opposite. Like if I've had a bad day, and maybe it's just more of a comfort thing, I'll take a nice whiskey. I'll just sit down by myself, deep breaths, just sip on that whiskey. And I feel like it just calms me. It kind of brings me back. It kind of washes away the bad day.
And I'm definitely more in line with you, Frank, too, on that. It's about my mood. It's about accessing my mood. And I want to be in a good mood and to enjoy the beverage that I'm going to have. Yeah, there are times when you're like, man, that was a really long day. I could use a beer. I mean, there's definitely those nights, but for the most part, I want it to lift the spirits.
Well, I think what's interesting about Japanese drinking, so I lived there for about 5 years, and my first job was teaching English, and my schedule wasn't like, I didn't teach at a public school. I taught adults. There isn't really an equivalent to it in the US, but adults will go and learn a language as a hobby that they do after work. So like a Zumba class, they're going to go and learn English. So it's not really rigorous. We're not grading them or anything like that. They're really more interested in meeting someone like me that's from a native English speaking country and just enjoying themselves. And a lot of them, it's stress relief. So I would work from 12 noon until 9 p.m. So when I'm getting off work, it's a great time to just head off to a bar. A lot of the time with the students, a lot of them are very, very friendly. They still have a million questions for me just about the United States or about English or anything. So we just head out. And alcohol is interesting because it's sort of a gateway to them opening up, because, the Japanese culture is one of those ones where people are very polite, but they're not very genuine. So, like Americans, we're kind of in the middle. We're a little bit more friendly. You don't need to get too many beers in an American for them to tell you how they feel about something, because it's just normal in our culture to express ourselves. But a Japanese person wouldn't be like that. Trying to get them to give you an opinion while they're sober is very, very difficult. But you start throwing back the beers, and then you start doing something a little bit strong. You might do some sake, some shochu, etc., and everybody's having fun. And by the end of the night, that's when you head to karaoke, and then you really let loose. Because at that point, you're just doing the equivalent of cheap wine coolers and everything, and then just blasting out whatever song you want. Doesn't matter if you can sing well or not. But it's just a very interesting progression. And so it's so important to their culture that you drink, even if you can't. So there are people that are literally allergic to alcohol. Like, they don't have the enzymes to break it down. They just turn bright red. They get really sick, but they'll still go out. They'll do things like they'll take a glass like this. I've got my beer in it. They'll order an oolong tea because it's about the same amber color as a beer. And that way it looks like they're still part of the fun, because they don't want to ruin your fun. They don't want to be the guy with the glass of water, like, oh, a bunch of alcoholics. They still want to be part of it. I always found that fascinating, and it's a lot of fun. Nobody feels left out, and you can just let loose.
I think it's so interesting to find out the different drinking cultures around the world too. And that's the fun thing, is to see that and to be able to experience firsthand for you and be able to be there with that. And that's really neat. I think that's really cool.
Adam and Beef share their favorite things about the Colorado craft beverage scene. Now, what is the Colorado scene like? What do you think's unique about it?
I think, obviously the Colorado scene, the big part of it is going to be the beer. We have so many breweries and a lot of the top ranked breweries throughout the United States. We are very big into our beers. I mean, even every small town has 3 or 4 breweries, and I know that's a very big thing across the country, but it's also very big. And, that's why we have the Great American Beer Fest, the world event. It happens here in Denver every year. But I would say there has been a very large culinary scene, which then also leads into cocktail scene happening in the last 5 years in Denver. It's actually grown a lot. It's been really cool to see that and see how more crafty things have been coming out, and more. There's been actually some, and it was interesting. We had a mixologist on recently, and he mentioned a couple of different breweries, and I noticed they were nationally recognized for some of their created cocktails that they have. So it's great to see there's a lot more different areas and different fun places. So you're starting to see that a little bit more. And there's just a massive amount of distilleries and winemakers and breweries. And it's just, it's cideries. There's tons everywhere.
Yeah, even sake, right? You can get everything here.
Colorado's got so many of the things you need for a good beer, and therefore a good sake, since they're cousins.
Yeah.
You've got the water. You've got the ingredients close by. I mean, imagine then it's going to be fresher. And plus you have, I would say, agreeable weather for it.
And the thing that's really fun too to see is a lot of the breweries, for example, Oscar Blues, which is probably one that's recognized nationally too in many ways, but they take a very holistic way of how they treat everything. So they actually have their hop farm, but that hop farm also has cattle on there too. And what they'll do is this whole thing. So when their spent grains feeds the cattle from the beer, the cattle is then raised and eventually used in their restaurants, but that cattle helps fertilize the soil. It's a much rounder picture, and a lot of places around here do that. I mean, we've got 100% solar breweries they're actually giving back electricity. I mean, it's really neat to see. They're very inventive, and I always talk about how creative the booze world is. And I truly see that every time that you meet someone in part of the world, if it's a winemaker or a brewer or a distiller, and seeing how they're addressing all that and how they really look at, I mean, it's important that the earth is going to be able to give them what they need, because without good water, what is their product going to be? So.
Yeah. Incidentally, none of the brewers in LA that I know of use the LA River for water. So.
Yeah, that would be chunky, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to
They're
be
using
rough.
your water too. I think
Yeah.
it's coming from the Colorado River.
Yeah, they get it comes down.
So you mentioned one festival. Are there a ton of festivals out there? Let's say pre-COVID.
You could probably go to one maybe every month.
Well, in the summertime, you can go one every weekend.
In the summertime, you could probably go to one every 3 weeks without driving more than like 2 hours.
There's one that's one of my favorite, and we used to go to this, and it's called the Brewers Rendezvous. It's up in this little mountain town called Salida.
Which I live.
He lived there, so it was great, and he lived walking distance to where the festival was. So I used to go up there all the time. But the thing that was so unique about this one, it was outdoors in this park, and there was a river that would run. It was a big whitewater rafting river that actually backed the brew festival, and it was in this grassy park. They had a music venue. They had all these big trees. It started off smaller. It was like maybe 20, 30 breweries.
20, yeah.
And then it got really big. But it's just such a fun thing because it's this park, you're outside, there's music, there's some food, and you got this river that just kind of comes through, and usually the cottonwoods are just blowing, and it's just kind of a fun environment. That one was always one of my favorites. I've been to the Great American Beer Festival many times, and in the beginning, it was really neat to see because it was more about the home brewers, and you would get all these unique beers that you've never had before. And then now it's something like 9,000 breweries from all over the world come there. It's overwhelming. It's in a massive convention center. I mean, you go into it and they usually greet you with bagpipe players. It's a thing. There's a lot of beers.
Just the hum of the people. Like, it's never quiet, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's like a rock concert without the music. Like, everyone's cheering. It's a little overwhelming.
How many days is it?
It's like a 4-day event.
Okay, I was going to say, with that many breweries.
You got to buy your ticket. You got to be ready to go because they sell out in like 90 seconds.
That's crazy.
Yeah. People from all over the world will come. And then that's kind of the cool thing when you're waiting in, pre-COVID, when you're waiting in line to go in, you're talking to somebody and they might have came over from Germany and, or wherever. And you're like, it's a truly international event. And it's fun for that reason, but it is overwhelming. I mean, you actually almost have to plan it out. You have to go sit down and have a game plan. And they'll do special releases too. Like I got to try, I think it's the Sam Adams Utopias, that crazy $200 beer.
26 ABV.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's that really, it's a wild one. And Jim Cook, he's sitting there pouring up. He was the one pouring that bottle for us. It's so cool. I didn't get to meet him, but I was like, hey, you're about a foot away from me. That's cool.
Well, and he's like the progenitor of this whole thing in the U.S.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was the one that
Like the craft
that
beer.
craft to bring it. Yeah.
Although it's funny because his dad didn't want him to be a brewer, even though his dad had been a brewer, his grandpa was a brewer. And ultimately, the first beer he made was his grandfather's recipe from the 19th century. It's funny how people end up becoming who they are because he could have just gone on and had a job in, who knows, Wall Street or something like that and never made a beer in his life.
Yeah. And what would the scene look like? It's that butterfly effect, that one decision and how different things have changed.
Well, that's what I love about the craft brew scene is that it doesn't take a lot of capital comparatively to get started. And then most of the time, the guys that get into it are home brewers. They did it as a hobby. They might home brew for 5 years or something like that. They meet other people. Then they say, hey, let's do a brewery together. And they're on their feet. What other industries like that? I don't even think you can get into wine that easily.
No. Because wine, too, you think about the process of that. And first of all, you have to land. Or you can grab grapes or juice from someone else. But if you were doing it from the full-on holistic way of doing it, you're buying land. And then how many years does that take to even get the first real grapes to come out? And then you've got to figure out how that whole part works. And then whiskey's a whole nother thing. We've talked about this where it's whiskey, for example. You'll make a batch and you're not seeing what even that tastes like for 5 years. It may not be great. So,
Man, I hope it's good.
yeah, you're like, well, rolling the dice. You're planning for 5 years from now. Who does that? You want instant results most times in industry. So you have to have the bankroll. All right, we're going to make all this, and then we're going to make something that we're going to actually sell in 5 years.
So what's the second beer you're moving on to there? I got to move on to mine, onto the Hanamachi.
So I started with the Eddie line, which is the grapefruit yanker, which also has a little bit of mango. So I'm on to the juicy bits now, and that's the hazy IPA. So it's got Citra, Mosaic, and Eldorado hops in it.
What about you, Beef?
Oh, man, I'm still drinking this tequila beer mix that I made. I put a little too much. I went half and half tequila and beer.
So the thing about beef too, you have to understand is beef doesn't usually just have a drink in front of him at a time. It's usually he'll have 3 or 4. It's like he's playing the drums or something. He'll have a little sip from here and there, and then just kind of go back and forth.
The best thing is that Adam has to explain me to other people. Let me tell you about this guy.
Hey, that's what your friend is for.
Yeah, I know, right?
He's not completely crazy. He just likes to drink.
It's like Top Gun, you got to have your wingman.
Yeah.
That's right, Goose.
I'm dipping into my Hanamachi again. Like I said, this is almost identical to an Asahi Super Dry. It's crazy.
Well, the color too. I mean, just the color, what I can see from it, it's amazing. Yeah, that looks awesome.
Crisp and dry. It's perfect for summertime. I think it's just awesome.
I bet you that just goes down fast when you're outside in the heat.
It's funny you're talking about where you like to drink. Do you like to drink in a hot tub?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that
amongst
is
other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Hot tub or maybe after a sauna. It's definitely a big thing you can do in Japan too. You can go to their hot springs. And probably one of the best experiences I had was going up to Niigata. So Niigata is an area that's kind of similar to Colorado. It's a mountainous region. That's one of the best rice growing regions in the area. And in winter, you can go to these outdoor baths. It's awful at first because you got to strip down and run into the bath. But once you're sitting there for a little while, and then you can grab a nice nigori, and you feel the blood come into your skin, and the whole experience is amazing. You can watch snow coming down while you're sitting there. I mean, I think it's one of the best experiences in the world.
That's what's fun is if it's snowing, is you can keep your beers cold. You can stack up a bunch without having to get out. Like you put them in the snow so they keep cold, and you can just reach over and grab another one.
Yeah.
That's thinking. That's smart.
Yeah. That's just good math. Before you even started talking about that, I was going to say for drinking though in a hot tub, I always love them when it's snowing outside. And there's something about that where you're hot, you're warm, and it's almost like your hair is frozen. And you got these like icicles in your hair, but you're enjoying a beverage. And yeah, there's a lot of memories associated with having some beverages in a hot tub. Or even too, there's one from Vashon. I remember my brother, he had a property up there, and I was drinking this really amazing stout. It was from Australia, and I think it's called Sheaf Stout. And we were smoking a really good cigar, drinking that stout, sitting in a hot tub, and then you had the stars just above you, and just no light pollution. You could see a little bit from Seattle, but you could see the milkiness of the Milky Way. So, and you're sitting there like, oh, it doesn't get any better than that.
You can download the Virtual Pub podcast from your favorite podcast provider. Find Adam and Beef on Instagram at Virtual Pub Podcast and visit their website at www.virtualpubpodcast.com. Coming up on the Drinking Buddy Show, I'm chatting with 2 legends in the Southern California craft beer scene. Daniel Drennan, publisher, editor, and head writer of Beer Paper LA, and Tom Carroll, homebrewer, beer educator, and judge. We'll go through their backstories, what's going on in the craft beer scene now, and how you can support your local brewery. Thanks for listening to The Drinking Buddy Show. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your buddies. Check out our latest artisanal snack offerings at www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Take care and drink well.